Hi everyone, this is Mike DelRose Jr. with the DelRose McShane team, and I'm accompanied by my colleague and partner Bobby McShane and partner and colleague Mike DelRose Sr.
Great to see you all.
Great to be here.
Recently we've been doing case studies, producing articles and video on real events that have happened in the real estate world. We take that information, we bring it back in front of us, we dissect it, break it down, and then we can present you with real-time advice and insight that are going to help you buyers and sellers make better real estate decisions. So we have a great lineup today. We're going to be talking about clients of mine that recently bought and sold their listing. Competitive market, we're talking the time frame is going to be early spring of 2026. So a couple months ago this process started. More inventory has come on since. So I'm just trying to set up the idea of what the market looked like. Buyers and sellers were coming to the table early, but not often. So you had a bunch of buyers waiting in the woodwork. This listing came on in Warrendale, Mass, a 3-bedroom colonial, really beautiful area. Warrendale has close proximity to Boston, public transportation, highway access via Route 2 to 95, restaurants, shops, an amazing community and a bunch of amazing neighbors there. I've done some business there over the years. So they find this house, and I basically tell them, where we were looking price-wise was they had to go all in, and they're not going to get another opportunity for the same price in this neighborhood. This was listed in the low 8s, and I said, make the best offer you possibly can. And they did, and we got into a final and best situation. That's always tough because you could see it slipping away as we got up in their range and comfort level. But what ended up happening for these buyers at the time was they reached out to family and friends and said, give us this money, we'll pay you back when the house sells. And they were able to get the highest offer price. They were actually tied with another offer of the same price. And we had better financing terms. We were able to not have a home sale contingency because they owned this other property about a mile away where they were living. And at the end of the day, the deal worked out and they got this beautiful house. They're pumped. And now the pressure's on.
Right.
The pressure's on because they have a condominium to sell. Let's talk about this condominium. It's also on the Waltham Watertown line. It was near the Belmont line, close access to Waverly Square, public transportation, restaurants, shops. It was a 4-room, 2-bedroom. Brick building, something that I had owned once in my life, a similar unit in the similar neighborhood. That was the first property I purchased with my wife. So very comparable to that. It was a little different than some of these other 4-unit brick buildings out there in the area. Larger complexes that were made of brick had similar attributes. They were all around 730 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 car assigned parking. But this unit here, a self-managed association, had 2 car deeded parking, which is a rarity. They allowed pets, which was a rarity.
Point, yeah.
They had a porch, a beautiful common area backyard with a patio, and we had barbecues out there. These are friends of mine. So it had more amenities than some of the relative properties out there. And my challenge now as a listing agent is we want to sell this very quickly because we have this pressure of a second mortgage coming down the pipeline very quickly. So what do? They were interested in exploring off-market opportunities. And I'm like, oh, great. This is causing a lot of debate in our industry right now. Listing portals and large brokerages alike are battling for control of inventory online and who gets to see that inventory. We're seeing that with our own company. We're seeing that with major portals. And our advice has never really changed. No matter what's going on outside of this office, our advice has always been to sellers, if all things are equal and there's no special circumstances, your best ability to make the most amount of money for your home
get it to market.
Is get it to market.
Right.
Competition creates, demand creates competition. Proper pricing means that seller is going to benefit greatly from that. But there's a lot of anxiety we're talking about here. And the reason I'm not going to get replaced by AI is because we deal with human emotion. And this is precisely, what we're referencing here. The seller wants that peace of mind. They don't want to have to wait to get this property under agreement and the hassle of having people come in their house, prepared for sale. That's the norm. That's what every seller...
It's the typical stress of the unknown and as it applies to your personal finances, what it is.
So, Mike, you said special circumstances, for example. What are some of those special circumstances where it might make sense for someone to forego going on the market?
You have a tear-down property. You're not going to be doing an extensive amount of marketing. You're targeting builders, per se. Maybe this property is something you don't really want to handle. Maybe it's inherited and you have no vested interest in. Maybe there's a health issue and somebody's at home sick and they do need to move, but you can't have people coming and going out of the house. I mean, you can name a myriad of scenarios. It doesn't happen too often. People find a way to make it work. People live in these houses while they're on the market and while they're being shown. So I think it's going to be very seller specific. Mm-hmm. I mean, our advice is going to stay the same, but at the end of the day, you as a seller sitting at home are going to decide how we prepare this unit and how we can maximize value with our recommendations. So we have like rules of thumb we follow, but every property seems to be the exception to the rule, right? We have these like averages and guidelines we like to follow. So that's when you're going to see that scenario. Mm-hmm. In this case, they were like, Mike, can we be done with it? Can we just get this sold? And it was interesting because I had a colleague with buyers that were looking for this unit.
Right.
The whole attraction to that was they had a pet, and this association, it had a pet restriction up to a certain dog and weight, but it fit them perfectly. It was exactly what they were looking for. And what I did is I went to my sellers and I said, you're potentially leaving money on the table when you sell it off market. There's always that potential. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what, interest rates could shoot up the day we list. It happens. But I say you remove the opportunity to make the most amount of money when you leave the property and sell it off market.
Right. And in some instances like this one, there was some value to those sellers for that.
Yeah, there's a dollar amount. And it doesn't usually come out that way. But essentially what you're saying is there's a dollar amount a seller is willing to pay for that security and that peace of mind. Right. Sometimes that dollar amount can be high, sometimes it can be low, but the bottom line is, you're talking about money you're potentially leaving on the table here. That's what we're discussing about.
And the appeal is that the buyer who you're trying to bring to that property, because it's the perfect unit for them, the value that they're going to leave on the table may not be as large. So there is some appeal to getting it done with that particular buyer.
Yeah, there's absolutely some appeal to that. And in order to make this work, we have to have the buyer pay a premium. I am not putting my house out on the market, removing the ability for competition and that drives up my price and say you can have it for what we're going to list it or lower, whatever you offer, fine. There is strategy around this because my job as a fiduciary, I have to make the most amount of money for my sellers as I possibly can. That's my job. So when we offered this property to this agent and their buyers, we said, we expect a premium. This is the range we're going to be considering the listing price. And we're going to expect an offer price to be in this ballpark range.
Right.
Everything in life is negotiable, so we didn't put hard numbers on it, but I did give them a very good idea of what it was going to take for us to not put this property on the market. So the buyer comes in, they're wonderful, they love the house. An offer comes in the next day. That offer was lower than what we were going to list it at. And there's a little bit of confusion because our expectations were pretty clear. Maybe they didn't value that house as high as we did. And for everyone at home, that's perfectly okay. We have a fair range of market value we're looking at to see what this house is worth. And oftentimes, people overpay that range of fair market value to get the property under agreement with heavy competition. And sometimes it just doesn't meet their personal needs as much, and they make a lower offer. And that's perfectly fine. The fair range of market value, typically when you have a competitive market with low inventory, you're going to see houses sell at the higher range of fair market value, if not over. And it could be slightly over, and it could be extensively over.
But that's the true essence of what happens when a property is not actively marketed. That buyer is working on the assumption that there's no competition for that property. So they take a more let's say not balanced look, but they're less. There's no stress to the transaction there. They have time to think about the values and all, but they also know there's no competition, so it's less compelling to them to pay the full value at that moment in time. If that's what and that's what happened here, I believe.
Yeah.
For many buyers, yeah, and I think you can also say similar to, having an offer deadline versus taking them as they come in and trying to bid up the competition in that aspect too, to some degree.
Right.
I think that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm reacting with the sellers here. I'm like, guys, this is not what we're looking for, but rest assured, I've been preparing this property for sale on my end the entire time. So we're just full steam ahead. We were planning on going on that week. At the time the original buyers saw this property, we hadn't even done pictures yet. Those were done the next day. So we politely rejected their offer. We thanked them and said we were going to go ahead and put this on the market and welcome the opportunity for them to present again. And they appreciated that, and they did end up presenting an offer again. So obviously there's some interest here, which I think is part of the confusion to why the offer came in so low given this rare opportunity. But either way, I'm a little bit relieved because now I know I can do my magic and do what I'm paid to do out there and maximize the value of this property. So open houses come on. We put the house on the market that Thursday. Friday, there's a broker tour. Saturday and Sunday, open houses. And I always open up my broker tours to the general public too. The more the merrier. Helps my sellers. It makes sense. Gives more people an opportunity to see that house. And traffic was amazing all 3 days. I had about 8 agents and buyers come through on Friday morning. I had probably about 30 over the next couple of days. Buyers, sellers, and their agents. Second showings took place then. And then we did set an offer deadline of, I believe it was it Monday or Tuesday? It was Monday afternoon. And I can start getting a feel for if offers are coming. Like, we never know if an offer is coming until it's presented in writing. And I always tell my sellers that. But you can generally start, in the background without disclosing to your sellers. Like, I feel like I'm going to get 3 or 4 offers here. And I don't set those expectations during the process, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, these are the questions they're asking. I had 3 people ask me for offer deadlines over that weekend, and that's kind of what happened. What terms are favorable to the seller? When are you going to be reviewing offers? How is this okay for financing? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm generating some competition. I know the first offer is coming back. I've been told that. We have at least 1 offer on the property. And so we kind of have a floor of what this house is going to sell for now, this 2-bedroom condo. And that offers some peace of mind. But if you recall, the buyers for the other house, the sellers, formerly buyers, have stretched themselves thin on the other property. So now maximizing value on this property is it's huge.
Right.
Every little bit's going to help now. So what ends up happening is I get 7 offers on Monday morning. Or before the deadline, probably an hour or two, the offers started coming in. They went up to a 4 o'clock deadline. I get a call at 1 o'clock from a buyer, direct. And they're like, Mike, I have some interest in this property. Okay, are you working with an agent? And yes, and gives me the agent's name. And not only is the agent prominent in the area, but it's a friend of mine. And I'm like, okay, I'll take care of this for you. I'm going to get you into this property. I call up the agent. Who I've worked with extensively over the past couple of years, and I say, hey, your buyer's calling me direct. Control your buyer, friend. And it's a joke because they were family members. And they ended up seeing the property and making a very competitive offer. Right. Very, very competitive. So out of the 8 offers total for that listing, I actually had 2 well below asking, like $20,000 below. I had 1 at the listing price, which was $425, by the way. The original buyers that came up did raise their offer price and went $10K higher than asking. And I had 2 offers that were around the $450 range. One of those had an escalation up to $460. And for those of you at home, never, ever cap an escalation clause because you are telling me exactly what you are willing to pay. You are not protecting yourself. Something that we learned probably 10, 15 years ago when those things became prevalent in our industry. But a good listing agent is going to counter that immediately. And not that it really mattered here, because the best offer came in about $15,000 higher than that. So it was a no-brainer for my sellers. The highest offer presented by my good friend and colleague was significantly higher than the next round of offers that my sellers did not decide to go back for a final and best. So that's a recap of what happened during this negotiation. All the agents that presented offers were professional, and the buyers were amazing. And you hate to tell people no, but my job is to protect my seller and their bottom line, and they certainly made out big here. And I was really relieved. They were ecstatic. But this case study is so important, because you're seeing the difference between holding your house off market and having one potential buyer for it and working with one buyer to full market exposure.
Right.
We went through the entire listing process where we're doing professional quality photos, websites, video tours, promotions, broker open houses, getting as many people as we possibly can through the house, the most eyes available. And what you see is the direct result of that process. We help remove emotion from our clients during these decision-making processes. Without doing that, they could have lost probably about, what's the ending sell price? $30,000, $35,000 in equity to their bottom line.
In the percentage of the sale price, that may not be a lot of money comparatively speaking to other transactions that we're involved in, but in this price point, it's a very large percentage difference in the amount of money that they were able to realize. And for their benefit, it took a lot of pressure off on that other end, as you mentioned. So I think we're of the mindset, more exposure, more activity, more people that have eyes on a property. That's why we spend so much money on marketing and pay a lot of attention to the quality of marketing and photography professionals, staging, for a reason, because it's going to usually result in a higher net price for that seller.
Now, when you priced the property too, obviously given these circumstances, did you intentionally price it at a point that you were going to make it very attractive to hopefully get multiple offers? Was that a discussion?
That's a great question, and I really enjoyed pricing this because if you looked at the relative properties to this, which were just 2-bedroom brick units with 730 square feet, they're a dime a dozen. The majority of them didn't quite have as many amenities, so ours all of a sudden had this instant advantage of standing out a little more. So it wasn't quite the same. I mean, 2-car parking in an association like this is rare. And in Greater Boston, that comes at a premium. So you can value parking spaces or garage spaces differently. I'm not going to get into that pricing strategy today, but I can tell you that even having a second car and pets and a communal backyard that's fenced in is not what you're typically going to find at the $425 price point at this time. You're just not going to see it, so it's a little more rare. So instead of pricing it high at, let's say, $450, where we did get a lot of offer activity at, I want to make sure that people knew there was value here. So that was very intentional. I don't like to drastically underprice the homes. I think getting close to fair market value is important and does help maximize the value. But it's very hard to underprice a house. You can overprice a house extremely easily. So with this sale on the other end, this purchase they were making, I wanted to put them in a position where it was going to offer peace of mind as quickly as possible. We weren't going to risk overpricing for the range, and it was designed to solicit more attention and offers, because the buyers can clearly see that this unit has a little bit more than the others around the same price point. So very intentional.
Yeah, and I think one of the nice results of this, the buyers who we brought off market in the beginning, very quickly thereafter bought another unit. So it wasn't as if they made a mistake. The unit wasn't perfect for them. The unit had more value to someone else, which is the whole reason of getting it to market, because that wasn't the perfect buyer at that moment in time. And they did the right thing by themselves by waiting, being patient. They passed on this unit or passed on making an offer beyond what the value was to them, and they get rewarded on the other end by buying a different unit that was a better match for their needs. So in the end, it proves out that going to market can typically help a seller realize a higher selling price, and with some patience, that buyer went out and accomplished what they wanted.
And it's to your point, it's exactly why we don't give an X dollar value on a particular house. It doesn't work that way. Like I said, I'm not going to be replaced by AI because my job is handling emotions. Well, what that emotion translates to is subjective pricing. So to one buyer, yourself, that unit's worth whatever, and you're going to have a different opinion of value if you're pursuing it personally,
Right.
Based on what the needs are, your personal needs are. So every house is, there's always another house, but in this case, when you price accordingly, it gives the most amount of buyers with their various needs and desires into the door. And that's ultimately what's going to drive the price up when you sell. So if there's nothing else, I'll close out. Any final thoughts?
No, I think it was a win-win for your clients, and they got to physically see the before in terms of going off market, and then obviously they were rewarded for going the other route, even with the time constraints. So you just act accordingly and price accordingly, to your point.
And congratulations to my sellers. Congratulations to those buyers that did end up finding a place fairly quickly after. And if you at home are interested in talking about pricing strategy, every situation is going to be different and unique to you. My job as your fiduciary is to maximize your sale price in a way that's convenient and best for you. And that looks different to everybody. So feel free to reach out. We're the DelRose McShane team of Caldwell Banker Realty in Belmont, and we look forward to seeing you out there.